So speed ramping, it can look real good if done right and really, really bad if done wrong. But luckily I'm gonna show you my full method as a beginner's guide to speed ramping in Premiere Pro. Now firstly, speed ramping is when you take a clip and you speed up or you slow down sections to create something like this. And you have to admit, it actually does look pretty dope. However, I see a lot of people speed ramping like this, and it just doesn't look as good as it could. Now the quick and nasty way to do a speed ramp is to just chop out a section and speed it up or slow it down. But by doing this, you get a real harsh movement and it just doesn't look natural at all. And that is because in real life, nothing just goes from 0 to 100 instantly. Like it slowly ramps up gradually over time. So this is exactly what we want to do with our speed ramps as well. So the first thing we need to do is obviously shoot our clip. Now, if you're wanting to slow down your footage in the speed ramp, you want to shoot frame rates like 50, 60, 100, 120 frames a second. But if you're wanting to speed up portions, then you can just shoot at your normal frame rates. All right, so now once we have our clip, we just need to drag it into a timeline. The first thing we want to do is trim the clip to length. So we need to figure out where the start is, about here. We want the end to be, I guess somewhere out here. Now once we have it to the length we want, we need to go down to the clip down here and right click this little FX button and come down to time remapping and speed. Now you want to make the video track a little bit bigger, and you can either do that by grabbing the top of video track 1 and dragging it up, or you can hold Option on Mac and scroll, or I think it's Control and scroll on Windows. And what changing the effects mode to time remapping does to the clip is now this line, instead of being opacity, is now your speed. Now the next step we want to do is find where we want our speed ramp to start and where we want it to end. Now this doesn't have to be 100% accurate, as we can adjust it later on. Now once we found the start, we just need to hold Command and click on Mac, or I think it's Alt and click on Windows. And again, go to the end of the ramp, and again, set another keyframe. Now once you've set your keyframes, you'll notice there's this little like down arrow with a line going through it, and this is what we're going to use to ramp up and down our clip. Now for my clip, I'm going to have it start and then ramp up and then ramp down in speed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this inner portion, I'm going to grab this line and drag it up, and you see that the speed percentage starts to go up. So this is what we're going to do. Set it to say 400% to start off with. Use that as just a base. Now the amount that you speed it up or slow it down will obviously depend on the clip that you're using, but remember, if you're slowing it down, that has to be a certain percentage based on the frame rate that you shot it at. So for example, if we were shooting at 50 frames a second and our timeline is at 25 frames a second, we're going to be able to slow it down by 50%. However, if we started going below that 50%, then our footage will start being choppy because there's not enough frames there to keep it smooth. And as a side note, I'd avoid doing weird percentages like 60 or 65 or 72 and stuff like that, because it starts having to like interpret the frames, and sometimes it's not as smooth as it would be if you're actually using full frames. And an easy way to figure out the percentage that you want to set it to is by grabbing the frame rate of your sequence and dividing it by the frame rate of your footage. So again, our sequence is 25 frames a second, and if our footage was shot at 50 frames a second, we divide 25 by 50 and we'd get 0.5 or 50%. Now if we were to play it back just like this, it looks exactly like that quick and nasty method of just chopping and speeding it up. And this is because we haven't actually added the smooth ramp portion yet. And how we do this is we grab the inner portions of our little arrows and we drag them to either the left or the right, and it starts to make this gradient on our line. And just doing this alone will make the speed ramp like a million times better. But we aren't finished just yet. There is a way of making it even smoother. We can do that by clicking on either edge of these little arrows. This little anchor adjustment comes up, and what we want to do is we want to grab the top one and we move it to either the left or the right, and it changes our linear gradient to an S-curve like this. And what this does is it goes back to when I was talking about how things don't just go from 0 to 100 instantly, they slowly ramp up. So as you can see, it starts off normal and then it slowly ramps up to the speed and then ramps down. Whereas if we look at the linear gradient, again, there's a speed and then it suddenly just goes to a normal speed and then goes back to it as well. Now for me, I've found setting this anchor point to about a 45-degree angle seems to work best, but just play around with it and just see what works for you. And finally, if you do need to move where the speed ramp starts or finishes, then you can actually just grab in the middle here, and this little arrow will come up. And what you can do is you can grab this and drag it to the left or the right, and it will change where the actual gradient starts, but it won't adjust the timing that it takes to go from slow to fast. And then also, if you want to lengthen or shorten the actual ramp itself, you can just grab one end and move it to the left or the right, and it will adjust that as well. Now, I guarantee you'll run into this problem eventually, and that is when you're adjusting the clip speed, and then suddenly it just kind of like disappears. And that's because when you're speeding up or slowing down the clips, the endpoints stay the same. So to make it work, it has to either shorten or lengthen. And if you do run into this problem where the clip just suddenly disappears, you can either zoom in and find it and stretch it out again, or again, zoom out and then stretch it back in. And then once you're finished, this is the difference that having a smooth speed ramp makes to your footage. Alright guys, if you did enjoy this tutorial, then consider liking and subscribing. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below in the comments. And if you want to learn more techniques, then I'll leave my playlist up here to all my tutorials. And as always, stay creative and just be you. See ya.